It takes more than just technical skills to be successful with commissioning. There are 6 essential skill sets that are required if you want to become a commissioning leader and lead your projects to commissioning success. And if you want to learn about what those 6 skill sets are, then keep on listening.
You're listening to the Industrial Commissioning Association podcast, where we discuss best practices for industrial plant process and energy system commissioning. Get ready to say no to outdated industry norms and say yes to improved project performance. Here's your host, Paul Turner.
Hello, everyone. Do you ever wonder why some projects are a success during commissioning, but then others really struggle at the end? Well, it takes more than just technical skills to be successful with commissioning. And that's what we're going to go through today, the 6 essential skill sets that make you a commissioning leader in this new era of commissioning and the complex projects that we're working on. So if you're not already a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, be sure to join. You get access to the ICA Global Commissioning Standard and lots of other helpful resources to help you with commissioning. You can go to icxa.net/join and become a member there. And as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions at all, put them in the chat below and I'll get them all answered at the end of this discussion to make sure that we get all your commissioning questions answered and set you up for success during commissioning. So it's not a surprise that the construction industry is broken, right? The construction industry has struggled for a long time, for decades, that 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget. It's not a new problem. It's been a problem around for a while, but how can we fix this? How can we improve the outcomes on projects? Well, it starts with commissioning. You've heard all the horror stories on projects, right? Of projects ending up years late and billions of dollars over budget. And it's largely due because there's no structured process to be able to complete projects at the end. It's great if you can start projects. It's great if you can execute projects, but the most important part is to complete them. And a lot of projects might seem like they're going along just fine as they're progressing, but then when it gets to the end, when it gets to that complex transition from construction to commissioning, that's where things start to fall apart, right? So commissioning isn't just about testing. There's a lot more to commissioning than just testing. Commissioning is really about leading, and that's where a lot of projects struggle, is by setting commissioning up for success right at the beginning of projects. You are the ones the industry has been waiting for, the commissioning leaders, the ones that can lead projects to success. And I believe very strongly that the commissioning folks are the ones in the construction industry, the only ones really that are going to be able to fix the broken construction industry. And it's unfortunate because commissioning is minimized and not taken too seriously on projects, but that's what's required, is strong leadership from commissioning in order to guide projects to success. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the construction groups that fix the broken construction industry. It's been like this for a long time, and they've tried for decades and have not improved any productivity gains on projects. And it's not the engineering groups, because they're very early in projects and they often don't have that connection with the end of the projects. There's a disconnect over a few years there. And unfortunately, it's not the project managers either. Their project managers are coming out of their project management training on how to initiate projects with all their charters and budgets and estimates and how to monitor projects, but they aren't equipped with the skills to be able to finish projects in a structured manner that is commissioning. And honestly, it's not any of these groups' faults. Commissioning is just complex, right? It's a complex part of projects to pull everything together. And it's not any of these groups' fault that they're not able to finish projects. It's just that they don't understand the complexities of commissioning and they need our help. So everyone on this call, everyone watching this video, you're the ones that the industry has been waiting for to lead projects to success. And these groups are depending on us to be able to do that. Commissioning folks are really the grandmaster conductors, right? They oversee all aspects of the projects, from design to construction to commissioning to testing to procurement, to all aspects, to make sure that everything comes together in the end of projects. And you need that overall conductor that's monitoring and guiding all pieces of the project if you're going to have it be successful in the end. And the commissioning folks are the conductor that the project teams rely on to be able to make sure that all instruments, every piece, is playing in harmony so that we can provide a finished quality product in the end. Commissioning is really the missing leadership function on projects, right? It's not going to be technology. It's not going to be some new project management function that leads projects to success, it's going to be people, right? And we need people to be the leaders to guide projects to success. Commissioning is that leadership function that pulls everything together for successful projects in the end. So my goal with the Industrial Commissioning Association is to create a new global standard for how we manage and approach commissioning on projects. And we've done that. We've released the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. That is your map to show you how the conductor performs on projects to pull everything together. My next goal is to raise up a generation of new commissioning leaders, right? Our wise commissioning experts are retiring in large numbers, and they're taking their expertise with them. So we need a new generation of commissioning expertise, of commissioning leaders to fill that void so we can lead projects to success. We've got a lot of projects to build in the next few decades, and we need that expert commissioning leadership to guide projects to success. My goal is to turn projects into success stories and not case studies of failure, right? With 9 out of 10 projects that are late and over budget, we're far away from that. And we need to turn these failure stories into success stories on projects, and commissioning leadership is the method to do that. Now, when you think of project failure, it's actually not what you think. It's not because of design errors, and it's not because of significant construction errors and delays. It's the lack of a commissioning first mindset even before design starts and even before construction starts. That lack of mindset to start with the end in mind and have that commissioning first mindset. With that commissioning first mindset, then that helps guide the design groups and guide the construction groups to success in the end. And that's what's missing on projects, is that commissioning first mindset right at the beginning of projects. There's always a plan for engineering design, right? We've got our engineering design teams and they're doing great work. And there's always a plan for construction guaranteed on projects, but there's rarely a plan on how to make all of this stuff work in the end right from the beginning. When we're planning engineering and we're planning construction, we need to be planning how to finish the project with a robust commissioning process as well, if we want all 3 phases of the project to come together successfully in the end. Now, this is Professor Bent Flivberg. He's written a book called How Big Things Get Done. And if you haven't read it, you should. It's a great book. It talks about all these same things as well, of how 9 out of 10 projects are late and over budget and a lot of the causes from that. And it all stems from the beginning of projects due to poor planning. And that's the reason commissioning leadership needs to be involved right from the beginning, is to lead projects to success in the end. So commissioning is just not the end of a project. It's the leadership function that projects are missing. And you're not just commissioning professionals. Everybody on this call, you're project finishers. You're the folks on projects that are the reliability enablers, the leaders to lead everybody on projects and all phases of projects to success. You are the industry leaders. Even if the rest of the industry doesn't believe that or think that, the commissioning folks are the only ones on projects that are able to see the full picture, right? The design folks are focused on design, and the construction folks are focused on construction. And we need them to do that. We need them to focus on their areas of expertise. What we also need is the overall commissioning leader that guides all of this to success in the end. The commissioning folks are the only ones that can pull projects across the finish line and make projects successful. And we're going to talk about some of the skills that you need today to be able to do that, so that you can lead the way on projects as well. It's always important, and I keep reiterating this on any presentation that I give, that you must start with the end in mind. And what that means is you need to essentially lead backwards. Is a commissioning first approach is required. You're starting right at the end of the project for your project and service date, and then leading backwards from there. But when you're approaching projects from this mindset, technical skills aren't enough. You need more than just technical skills to be able to lead all aspects of projects. There's lots of pieces of the puzzle that come together on a project, right? Every piece and every person's role on the project is important to add to the project success. And the thing is, all of these pieces are kind of scattered for the duration of the project, but they need to come together and fit appropriately for a proper configuration at the end of the project. And that's commissioning's role, is to make sure that all pieces of the puzzle come together so that we have a successful project in the end. The commissioning folks are the leaders that allow that to happen. So let's get into some of the skill sets that are required for commissioning folks in addition to some of the technical skills that you already have. So the first skill set to have is strategic thinking. Commissioning folks need to understand the big picture, right? The entire project life cycle, right from the beginning of projects, planning during feed processes, through design, through construction, and how all of the pieces are going to come together in the end of the project. The commissioning folks are that overarching leader to see the big picture and make sure that all of these pieces come together in the end of the project. So it's important because of that commissioning folks are involved right from day one on a project. They need to be there to shape contracts, to define scopes of work, to establish project strategies and commissioning strategies, and how all pieces of the project from design, construction, and commissioning are going to come together successfully. So commissioning strategy and planning is critically important to include at the beginning of projects to guide the team to success. The commissioning folks are really the grand master of the chessboard there, right? They see all the pieces, they see the plays, they see how to move each piece of the project towards success, where the potential pitfalls are, and they oversee the entire project and all the players involved to make sure that the right moves are being made so that projects end up with success in the end. Without that grand master overseeing the entire aspect of the project, then it can quite easily, the project can end up in a trap where it runs into major problems, huge pitfalls, huge delays, because there's nobody overseeing all aspects of the project and making sure that all pieces fit together in the end. So the next skill set is communication and influence. And communication is important for all aspects of everything we do in life, right? And commissioning is no different. We need to be able to speak on projects so that others listen and understand and have the influence and persuasion that's needed to help all project participants understand what success looks like during commissioning. Commissioning folks need to be able to understand and translate a lot of the technical ideas that are on projects to management, to project owners, to some of the non-technical teams. And it requires lots of levels of discussion, right down to the individuals in the field, to other project managers on the project, to project executive. And our communications to each of these groups needs to be tailored specifically so that when we're speaking, those groups are listening and they understand. And the level of complexity involved in commissioning does require us to adapt our level of communication depending on who we're speaking to and what the audience is. Commissioning folks need to be able to influence decisions, and when there's unrealistic expectations on projects, have those conversations and manage a lot of those expectations. Because a lot of what commissioning is managing expectations. Everybody has an understanding of what the project might look like in the end to them, and some of those expectations are realistic and some of them are not. And it's a process of managing those expectations so that everyone is aligned in the end. And your voice matters in how we communicate and discuss these complex topics on projects. It's very important in how we communicate, and we need to use our voice to help others understand and come to a common agreement at the end of projects. So commissioning folks need to be that bold leader that steps up and leads the team to success, right? That new approach, that new vision, not just following the way it's always been done, but taking charge and leading projects to success. Despite all the challenges that we will inevitably always encounter on projects, the commissioning folks are those bold leaders to point the vision and guide the team to come together and have a successful project in the end. And without those bold leaders, then everybody kind of goes in their own direction and gets lost along the way. And we don't know what we get in the end, right? But it takes those bold commissioning leaders to step up and lead projects to success. So the third skill set that is important is, of course, leadership and team alignment, right? And this is challenging when you're working on large projects with thousands of people involved. It's important that we don't just manage the work. We need to lead and inspire the people to want to accomplish great things, right? That's the only way that great things are accomplished in the world, and projects are no different, is we need those big, bold, strong leaders that can inspire teams to build great things despite all the challenges. And that's what commissioning is those bold set of leaders to guide projects to success. There's lots of course, project management functions like coordinating internal groups and external cross-functional teams and everybody that's involved. But we also need to be leaders in the industry and lead projects to success. We need to be building trust is very important across all of the trades that are involved. the vendors, contractors, clients, all the groups that are involved. It's a huge communication role. It's a very important role to coordinate and build trust and be that strong leader to guide projects to success. You've heard the expression, if you want to go fast, go alone, but the projects that we work on require lots of people involved, right? Nobody can build these projects on their own. So if you want to go far, we need to go together as a group, as a team, and the commissioning folks are the leaders to guide these large teams to success. Here's the puzzle analogy again, right? Everybody's got their piece of the project and their piece of the puzzle. And the only way that fits together is when commissioning folks guide the team on ensuring that that all fits together. So everybody's got their piece and we all lend our piece of the project together. The commissioning folks then are the leaders that everybody's relying on to show how this all fits together in the end. So the fourth important skill set is risk management and foresight. And this is something that the commissioning folks really excel at, right? Because we're the ones involved at the end of the project. We've seen the successes, we've seen the failures, we've seen what works and what doesn't. It's almost like the commissioning folks can tell the future, right? 2, 3, 4 years in advance during some of the design functions, we can see what problems might arise years in advance. And in a way, the commissioning folks are almost able to see around corners. And when you have commissioning folks involved in your projects very early, they can help some of the groups that are only involved in the beginning of the project see what some of these issues are, mitigate risks, and prevent costly delays later, much earlier in the project. So risk management and foresight is the fourth critical skill set to have, in addition to any of the technical skills that you might already have. It's about proactively identifying risks before they even become delays, right? So not reactively waiting for a problem and then firefighting. Commissioning is about proactively being involved in projects, identifying potential risks that may happen in 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, and mitigating those risks so they don't even occur in the first place. It's about not reacting, but proactively preventing delays and making sure that the smoothest path to the end of the project is what the group is following. And all groups on projects depend on the commissioning folks do that to guide them through the easiest path, the most successful path to the end of projects. The commissioning folks own the critical path, right? Not only just during the on-site critical path of testing activities, but right from the beginning of projects. Commissioning folks are the leaders that guide people down the critical path and make sure that all project participants don't veer too far off that critical path. We keep the team focused in the right direction to make sure that we're taking the path of least resistance to the end and preventing failures before they even happen. That critical path is important, and without the chess grandmaster to guide the project team, then when you're working with large groups of people, it's pretty easy for people to veer off path and go in their own direction and get a little lost until someone pulls them back in the right direction at the end of the project. And if your commissioning folks are only involved at the end of your project and are only guiding things back to the right path in, say, the last 10% of your project, well, for the last several years, then everybody's kind of veered off path and it becomes almost impossible to pull everybody back to the right spot at the end, rather than having that focus right from the beginning and guiding the team along that critical path for the entire duration of the project. So commissioning folks are not just solving problems, they're preventing problems from even occurring in the first place. And the commissioning folks can really shape the future of projects. When they're involved, they're like wizards with a crystal ball to be able to foresee some of these issues and keep the project on path before it even gets off track. With that level of foresight, the commissioning folks are extremely beneficial to have on your projects at the beginning, because they can see these things that could potentially happen in years in advance. And it always saves money when you can prevent issues and prevent delays much earlier, rather than let things fester and become larger, more expensive issues later in your project. By having that foresight to be able to see issues well into the future, by having commissioning folks involved in your project, you're able to save significantly, saving in time, saving in money for things that you can catch much earlier and prevent delays on your project. So the fourth critical skill set to have for commissioning, in addition to technical skills, is that we can't be reinventing the wheel on every project. Commissioning is a solved problem, despite what people think, and they would all feel that their project is a unique, special snowflake. Unless you're building the James Webb Space Telescope or something like that that's never been done before, I guarantee that your project is not unique. There's LNG facilities all over the world. There's power substations all over the world. There's water treatment facilities all over the world. These projects have been built many times before, and these are solved problems. And we need to be approaching commissioning that same way and following standardized, proven processes that lead to project success. If we're going to try and reinvent the wheel every project and have a new random commissioning process every project, then you're going to get a new random outcome every time on projects because you have no standard proven processes to follow. And these are solved problems. So there's no reason to have to reinvent a new project process for commissioning every time. Follow and build repeatable systems using repeatable templates and repeatable checklists and repeatable workflows. Everything that's worked for others worked for you on projects is set these processes up. And that's a critical function or skill set of commissioning folks, is to define those processes and standardize these processes to guide the team to success. So this is a critical skill set number 4, is establishing these proven, reliable processes to finish projects. And the easiest thing to do is to get a copy of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, because that is your map, that is your guide. That is the proven process that's been used for decades on projects that shows you how to complete projects in a standardized manner with proven processes. There's no reason anymore to have to figure this out on your own and reinvent the wheel. All the resources you need are in the members area of the Industrial Commissioning Association. Get a copy of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard and implement that on your projects. That's your best path to success using proven processes, because when you increase the maturity of your commissioning processes, then that's only going to increase the consistency and give you consistent results on projects by following that map, that proven process to complete projects, rather than thinking that you have to figure this out on your own and reinvent the wheel every time. We certainly don't want to do that. Imagine if when you bought, say, some IKEA furniture, they never gave you that sheet of instructions, right? Here's a bag of screws, here's all the wooden pieces, dump it all on the floor, go figure it out. For simple things, maybe you can figure that out. But for more complex builds, it's sure a lot easier and quicker if you have a proven map to follow on which size of screw goes into which piece, rather than just guessing and it taking twice as long to build everything, and maybe you're missing something in the end. When you have that map, that document, that proven process to follow, sure makes things a lot easier to get to the end quickly and efficiently and know that you're going to have a chair that actually works, rather than something that's only got 3 legs and missing a piece. And the 6th important skill set that commissioning folks need to ensure success on projects is to approach every project as a lesson. We're all really good at gathering lessons learned, but often those lessons learned get quickly filed and forgotten about and never applied on the next project. So it's important that commissioning folks understand that every project is a lesson, and to focus on continuous improvement so that the next projects can get even better. And this isn't done very well in the industry, because the construction industry has not increased productivity or increased the success rate of projects over the last several decades. So we're not learning our lessons. We're not building on continuous improvement. We're stuck with the way it's always been done. So it's important to not only just capture these lessons learned, but actually apply them on next projects. And the commissioning folks are the ones to do that. And another main reason why commissioning folks need to be involved at the beginning of projects is so that they can bring the lessons learned from the end of previous projects back to the beginning of the next projects. And those are the feedback loops that are required in order to flow the projects or the lessons learned from the end of projects back to the beginning of projects. We need to turn past project mistakes into the playbooks for the next projects to avoid those same mistakes, because failure isn't the end. There's lots of challenges and lots of failures on projects. It's the fuel to be able to learn from those and apply them on the next projects. Not only your own projects, but contributing to the commissioning community like the Industrial Commissioning Association here. We need to help everybody learn and understand and learn from our past failures so that they don't need to make them on their projects as well. And that's one of the main goals of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, is to pack all those lessons learned into a single document so that you don't have to make these same mistakes. Follow these proven processes and you don't have to make these same expensive mistakes that have been being made for decades. Is you've got the map, you've got that playbook in your hand so that you can avoid and apply some of these lessons learned on your projects as well. Again, here's the puzzle analogy, that continuous improvement process, so that it's easier and more efficient to build the puzzle the next time. When we have these feedback loops built into our projects, then we're much more able to complete them more efficiently because we're avoiding past failures and learning from others. And when you log into the members area of the Industrial Commissioning Association, that's the goal, is to have this central knowledge base where others can learn and understand from others' mistakes so they don't have to make them as well. So one thing to note is that it's clear that no one is planning for commissioning early enough on projects, right? There's a stigma in the industry that commissioning is at the end, and there's a real problem that commissioning isn't involved at the beginning of projects. I see this online all the time. Everybody's always saying that commissioning folks need to be involved earlier, and commissioning folks have been saying this for decades, and nobody's been listening. So you were right all along to know and understand that commissioning is not being planned early enough on projects, and it's hurting projects. There's that stigma that commissioning is an expense and not an ability to save time and money on projects, because commissioning is still unfortunately viewed as just testing at the end rather than as a leadership function to lead projects to success. And I think you know and you understand that the commissioning industry is in trouble, right? There's more and more work, there's more and more complex projects, and less skilled people to be able to do this work. The construction industry is in trouble, and if it's struggling right now, it's going to struggle even more in the future as our wise commissioning experts are retiring and there's nobody to do this work. And when there's no guidance, when there's no leadership from commissioning, then projects are going to struggle even more to finish on time and on budget with successful outcomes. Now, when it comes to commissioning, you don't need to know everything, right? Projects are complex. There's lots of moving parts and lots of expert discipline. But what you do need as a commissioning leader is a system and a community to be able to be that leader to lead projects to success. And that's the goal of the Industrial Commissioning Association, is to set you up as that leader, to give you the tools, to give you the guidance, to give you the expertise and the community support so that you can be that leader to lead projects to success, that leadership that the construction industry so badly needs these days. And this is bigger than one of just any of us. The construction industry is huge, and it's going to take more than one person to lead the construction industries to success. So this is the movement that we're creating here at the Industrial Commissioning Association. This isn't just a job anymore. This is a mission. This is the effort of everybody, all the commissioning experts, everyone on this call, to fix the broken construction industry and be able to lead projects and deliver projects to success. This is the movement, the leadership initiative that the Industrial Commissioning Association is undertaking here, is to build up and support the commissioning community for success so that we can all collectively make our impact and help the struggling construction industry understand the importance of commissioning so that we can all together work together collaboratively and lead projects to success. So it's a choice that we make, right? We can take the path that's always been traveled to the left there and continue with the way it's always been done. We can continue struggling on projects in 10 years from now. Nothing can have changed, and we're still delivering projects late and over budget, and commissioning is still minimized on projects. Or we can take the path to the right and we can be the leaders. We can step up and we can help the construction industry and improve the performance on projects, because we've got a lot of projects to build. The commissioning community are the only folks that are going to be able to lead projects to success, because, like I said earlier, commissioning is complex, and we need to be the leaders that step up and help projects succeed. Despite all the challenges, despite all the resistance, and despite the lack of respect or understanding of commissioning, regardless, we need to be the leaders and choose that path less traveled to guide projects to success. It's the only way that projects will succeed. It's not going to come from other groups, like I said. It's only going to come from commissioning to be the leaders, that leadership commissioning community to lead projects to success and show everyone else what success during commissioning looks like on projects. And what happens if we don't do this? What happens if we just continue with what's happening right now, with the way it's always been done, with projects that are late and over budget? Well, we're not going to be able to deliver on the future that we all need. It's always going to result in cowboy commissioning. It's always going to result in a scramble at the end. It's always going to result in late and over budget projects without commissioning leadership stepping up and guiding projects to success. And we just cannot continue in that manner to let projects struggle like this, right? The commissioning community collectively, me as an individual, us as a group, the entire commissioning industry needs to be the leaders to lead projects to success so we can avoid this cowboy commissioning wrangling of everything at the end of projects. And it only starts now with the commissioning community to lead projects to success. So I encourage you to be that leader and lead projects to success so that we can make a difference and make an impact in the industry. Because if we don't, then we've got a lot of infrastructure to build for all of the climate initiatives, for sustainability that we want to undertake, for electrification. There's huge demands for power and new technology systems like AI. The construction industry is expected to double in the next 15 years from $13 trillion to something like $22 trillion. And there's a massive infrastructure build out that's ahead of us. The construction industry has failed for the last several decades, and we can't keep pointing fingers. The commissioning industry needs to be the leaders to guide projects to success, because we just can't have 10, 20, 30, 40% wasted on projects due to project overruns when we're looking at numbers that are in the order of tens of trillions of dollars. We need to do better as an industry, and the commissioning community is the only group that can lead projects to success. We need to step up as the leaders to be able to help everyone understand how this works, because we're the only ones that can see the truth. We're the commissioning leaders in the industry, the only ones that can lead projects and see the big picture, and we can't stay silent. We have to be the leaders and build this community to lead projects to success. It's the only way, because it hasn't worked any other way up till now. We need this new approach with commissioning leadership to lead projects to success. So the commissioning leaders need to be the leaders in the construction industry. And this is what the construction industry has been waiting for. Despite all the negative comments to the commissioning folks, or minimizing or disrespecting the commissioning folks on projects, the construction industry really has been waiting for this as the catalyst to drive change and improve project efficiency. We, as the commissioning leaders, need to lead as a community and show people what this looks like on projects. So we need to change projects. We need to change the project outcomes. And us as the commissioning leaders need to be the change catalyst to change the world that we hand over for improved project success. It's the only way that projects succeed, that the construction industry improves performance, is from this group right here, from the commissioning industry and the leaders in the commissioning industry to lead projects to success. All right, so we've got several resources that can help you along the way as you're taking this forth and leading on your projects. So to help others understand and how you can help and share some of the messages that are out there. So we do have our lineup of commissioning courses. So if there's someone on your project that isn't familiar with this, then you as the leader can help them understand. Point them to these resources where they can help and understand what are the commissioning strategy and planning initiatives that are required on projects. Get your construction folks, get your engineering folks, or maybe some junior members on your commissioning team. Point them to these resources, and this will help them elevate their understanding of commissioning so that they can join your team and become the commissioning leaders or the future leaders in the world as well to lead commissioning to success. So definitely check out those resources. You can check the course lineup out at icxa.net/courses and get those in the hands of others on your projects so they can help and learn and understand commissioning as well and be part of your initiative to lead projects to success. So if you don't already have a copy of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, go to icxa.net/join. You can get a copy of the standard. It's a 9-document set in the standard there. It's your roadmap. It's your guide to show you how to complete projects. Give that standard to other folks on your projects, for construction folks, for engineering folks, for procurement folks, project managers. Get that in their hands. As the commissioning leaders, we need to be able to get this information out on projects so that they understand what we're up to here and why we need commissioning involved earlier. If you need a shorter document, check this out, icxa.net/brochure. This is a good single-page document that helps other people understand what this standard is all about. So sometimes you're not going to start the discussion with a 9-document set of documents for the standard. This single-page sheet is a great conversation starter. Download that at icxa.net/brochure. That's a great way to help others on your project understand what this standard is all about and what this roadmap looks like to complete projects successfully. So that's another resource you can use as a tool to help you on your projects and elevate the importance of commissioning. All right, so those are the list of resources there. You can check that out. If you have any other specific requests or anything else you need help with from the commissioning community to support your leadership initiatives, feel free to email us at info@icxa.net. That's our mission here at the Industrial Commissioning Association, is to help people understand what commissioning looks like and support the leaders in the industry to lead projects to success. So we've got time for questions. Let me go back up to the top here and I'll go through some of the questions. Hey, Peter, how you doing? Good to see you. Love the term grandmaster. It is so true. Absolutely. Yeah. That image of the chess grandmaster moving all the pieces in the right direction. Without that grandmaster overseeing all aspects of the projects, then each piece of the project is really going in their own direction, right? And maybe they're going in the right direction or not, but everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And then you only find out at the end if the pieces were moved in the right direction to be successful in the end. But you need that grand master to move all the pieces in a coordinated manner and make sure that they're all headed in the right direction for a successful finish. So yeah, I love it. I'm happy to be part of this session. Happy to meet everyone. Hi, Alex. How are you doing? I'm sure you found the session helpful. If you have any questions, shoot them in the chat and we'll be sure to get them answered. Hey, Zach, good to see you. Always appreciate your support. Glad you could make it. Glad you could join, and we should be in touch. I'll reach out to you about maybe some of the other things that we're working on in the Western Canada initiative to help everyone understand commissioning. Good to see you. The commissioning grandmaster needs to be appointed prior to capital investment to avoid costs or failure. This is a key point for sure. Only having commissioning involved at the end of projects then misses all of the aspects of planning and coordination that are required at the beginning of projects. Really, the reason we start projects is to finish them, right? We don't start projects just for the sake of doing some design, and we don't start projects to bolt a bunch of pumps to the ground. We start projects so that we can deliver successful systems. And who's the group responsible to deliver successful systems? That is the commissioning folks. So it would seem very obvious and prudent to me to include those folks that are responsible for finishing the project right at the beginning of the project. That's the only way you're going to guide projects to that successful finish. Now, when commissioning is only treated as testing at the end, then yeah, sure, things fall apart and projects fail because they were never planned properly in the beginning. But the project teams that succeed are the ones that have commissioning involved before contracts are awarded, before there's any financial investment decisions that are made to ensure the viability of the project and ensure that everyone's working towards the successful finish at the end. Good morning, Paul. Thanks for having a good presentation. Absolutely glad you appreciated it. Yep. If you haven't got a copy of the standard already, definitely get a copy of that because that's a super helpful document to guide your projects to success. And thanks for the feedback. Dennis, great information from ICXA as always. Yep, that's our main goal here, is to help the commissioning community be the leaders and guide projects to success, because that's the only way that the construction industry is going to improve, is when we collectively as a commissioning industry push these initiatives up and elevate the importance of commissioning to help everybody understand what this is all about, right? Because commissioning is complex and it's not just going to happen. It hasn't happened. Everybody's been kind of individually frustrated on projects for a long time and saying, we know there's a better way, but nobody's listening to us, right? So the Industrial Commissioning Association is giving everybody that voice and leadership to elevate the importance on projects. And we've got a whole bunch of initiatives in the works here for 2025 to elevate that. And there's going to be lots of opportunities for people to get involved and spread the message and convey to the construction industry in general the challenges that we're facing and how we can all succeed together. skill project management must be have on commissioning job? Absolutely. Yeah. I would say most of those 6 skills that we discussed are project management related, but different than the project management aspects that you would typically think of, right? If you go to the Project Management Institute and you look at getting a PMP, everything you would read or see in there is related to starting projects, right? Starting with your project charter and your staffing plan and budgets and estimates. But I have my PMP and I went through all that process, but then I was wholly unprepared to actually finish projects. There's a very structured project management approach to commissioning, and that is not taught anywhere in any of the project management literature that exists out there anywhere. So it's great that these project management professionals are getting their PMP, but they're missing one critical function is the process to actually finish projects. And it's scary because I was the same way. As I got my PMP, I was all excited and proud. I'm ready to go tackle projects. But as I got through the project, I realized I am wholly unprepared to be able to finish this project because commissioning is so complex and nobody explained it to me through any of my project management training. And that's the case for a lot of people, right? It's trial by fire to figure it out on your own, and likely with 1 or 2 failed projects before you learn what commissioning is truly all about. And that's the gap that we're looking to fill in our commissioning courses, is what is the commissioning strategy and planning aspects that are required from a project management perspective for commissioning to be successful, because there's a huge gap in the industry when you're looking at project management professionals. And that's why I say project success isn't going to come from the project management group either, not because it's their fault. It's just because they're not being brought up or trained or educated with those processes that are required to finish projects. And it's just a critical flaw of the system. The commissioning folks are the only ones that can guide projects to success in the end. How can we better incorporate commissioning into the procurement process? This would greatly reduce time as some suppliers do in-house testing. And I would say procurement from 2 aspects. So the first aspect of procurement where commissioning can have input is during your EPC contract procurement. So even before your construction contract is awarded, even before your design contract is awarded, if those are both part of the same contract or if there's separate design build contracts, that's when commissioning needs to be involved from a procurement processes to make sure that those EPC contracts include the proper aspects for commissioning. And if you go back to last week's or the week before live presentation that we did, that's exactly what we talked about, is the 8 clauses to be included in EPC contracts for project success. So that's the first critical aspect that commissioning needs to be involved in. And those 8 clauses are spelled out in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. You can get a copy of the standard. It shows you how to put your EPC contracts together for success. Then you're right, the second aspect would be equipment procurement. So as the construction folks are buying equipment, what's required for off-site testing, for factory acceptance testing, and more critically for integrated factory acceptance testing both the hardware and the software in the factory. These are all critically important aspects to include in contracts, because invariably when it's not included in contracts and everybody realizes, oops, we don't have the right testing in here, nobody wants to pay for that change order to do that testing in the factory, right? The decision 9 times out of 10 is, oh, we'll just do the testing on site. We'll skip it. Get it out of the factory, get it to site, and we'll test it later. When you do that, you've deferred all the risk on your project to on-site testing. And then any issues that you could have caught in the factory have been missed and will only be caught on site, causing delays, causing very expensive delays, in much more expensive than what that change order would have been. So it's very important to follow the ICA Global Commissioning Standard and make sure that these commissioning inputs in contracts are appropriately included so we can avoid those situations. Great information, Paul. So glad to see this effort. It is greatly needed in our industry. Absolutely. Yep. And we're encouraging people to get involved. Stay tuned to our newsletters and our weekly updates here. We've got lots of greater initiatives coming up as we build up the community. We build up our leadership and board members. We've got lots of ideas for technical subcommittees if we're looking at specific policy, if we're looking at specific technology. What does the industry need to do to elevate the importance of commissioning and collectively work together as a commissioning team to focus on this in industry? Because you're right, it hasn't happened for decades, and it's so badly needed that the commissioning group, like I've mentioned a few times, is the only group that's going to be able to make any impact and change the industry. And we need to do that collectively as a team here so that we can all improve the output of projects. Commissioning is quite painful. Well, it can be, yes, if there's no process being followed. Keeping patience upkeep is really a great skill. Systems that drive the entire process helps. How such systems can be developed to relieve the pain somewhat and avoid missing something. Absolutely, yeah. Commissioning can be painful. If there is no process, if commissioning is only thought of as testing at the end, then it's a brutal, painfully process. You get in those situations and you probably start to question your path decisions, and it's all you can do is try and keep your head above water. But the damage is done at that point because all of the early opportunities to guide a successful commissioning process were missed much earlier in the project. So the best advice I can give you is to follow what's outlined in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. That outlines the process starting right at project concept, right at project feed, on what's required for putting together your commissioning strategy, your division of responsibility, your inputs into contracts. Everything is defined in there. And the ICA Global Commissioning Standard is the first and only standard that I've ever found or seen that actually defines what takes place during early commissioning involvement. Everybody in the industry will say that commissioning folks need to be involved early, but up until now, up until the release of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, there was no document that even defined what that was. There was always commissioning standards out there that would talk about construction completions and on-site commissioning, but there was nothing that actually defined what early commissioning involvement was. So that's the best advice I can give you, is get a copy of the ICA Global Commissioning Standard, because it's all defined in there in how you're defining your project commissioning plan, how you're defining your commissioning execution plan, and all of the inputs that are required to go into there to systematize your project and have a smooth transition from area-based construction to systems-based completion. That's how you make commissioning a lot less painful, because if you do all that upfront work, the 80% of the commissioning process that takes place before on-site commissioning even starts, when you focus on that 80% of the upfront planning effort, then the last 20% of your project is actually quite easy, and if done properly, can actually be quite boring because everything is just executing as you had already planned. It's when you skip that 80% of the upfront planning that commissioning is quite painful. I understand the pain that you're referring to, so I definitely encourage you to eliminate the pain and follow the process defined in the standard, and actually have some of the best days you've ever had on projects when things are working smoothly because you've done the upfront effort ahead of time. PMP and commissioning are totally different. I agree. They can complement each other. PMP is a great way to start a project, but nothing in any of the PMP literature shows how to complete a project. If you look through any of the information that PMI puts out, if you say search PMBOK, search for the word commissioning, you won't find it. So that's pretty shocking and disappointing that there's no discussion on how to finish projects. Now, I understand that PMP is more generic. They're more holistically looking at all aspects of project management, not just in the construction industry, right? They're looking for project management related to developing software or managing production play or any type of project management process to manage accounting and things like that. But when there's no mention of commissioning whatsoever, it's still surprising, because there is still a huge, large aspect of the industry that does focus on construction and project management, right? And when there's a complete disconnect, then it's a bit misleading and false to understand that PMP is going to help you in the construction industry, because you're missing that key critical aspect to complete projects during commissioning. And that's why we've put together our course lineup, is to fill in that gap and help everybody understand that there's more to project management than just the literature that's out there. You also need to know how to finish projects, which is our course lineup there of our commissioning course series. So definitely check that out. If you got your PMP, that's a great start, but then you also need to know how to finish projects, and that's the courses that we've got lined up there. Mostly the commissioning management team is engaged in the EPCC projects in the middle or just before the time of the commissioning phase, when almost everything related to EPC is decided. How are these 6 skill sets integrated in such a scenario? You are correct. That is the typical aspect in the industry, is commissioning folks are only engaged in, say, the middle of construction, which is too late, because exactly like you say, everything related to the EPC is already decided, right? They've already decided their long lead equipment procurement. They've already decided their construction sequence. They've already decided their large labor workforces. And then the commissioning folks come along and they say, well, no, this isn't right. This doesn't line up. We need this in a different sequence. We need this completed. And they start making all these changes, right? Well, it's no wonder that construction folks are upset, is they've been working for a year or two already, being very productive, and then the commissioning guys come along and want to change everything. Well, that's a failure. That's a breakdown in commissioning being involved earlier, right? Because all of that should have been defined in the contract, in what was the sequence for construction completions, what needs to be completed as each of those construction completion milestones. If that's defined in the contract right from the beginning, then that's the information that construction folks need to plan their work successfully. They need the full picture, right? They need to know what that construction sequence looks like. And then there's no disputes later because it was given to the construction folks up front. They know what they need to plan for, and they can plan successfully for that without any change. Nobody likes change on projects. That always means more time, more cost. And it's only fair to the construction folks to give them that information up front in contracts. Now, everybody will say, well, we don't know enough information about the project. We don't know all the design details. And I'll say bullshit. If you don't know what you're building, then you shouldn't be awarding a construction contract. You definitely know when you're awarding your EPC contract, what are the systems on your project? You know that you have a chemical dosing system. You know that you have auxiliary power system. You know a lot of this stuff. Now, no, you don't have every equipment tagged piece of equipment figured out. That'll come out from the detailed design, but you know what these systems are, and you know the order and the sequence that they're going to need to be completed. You can put that in contracts, despite what everybody says. So with a little bit of upfront effort, you can plan this out in your EPC contracts and give everybody the full picture to avoid exactly the scenario, the situation that you're talking about. So all of those 6 skill sets that I brought up there are exactly that, to be proactively involved in projects before contracts are even awarded, so that we can plan in contracts and align for success before the pen even hits the paper to sign for those contracts. And that's the only way you avoid those disputes and ensure construction and commissioning are aligned, is when it's defined in contracts. Because if it's not in contracts, then it'll never happen, right? It'll always cause a dispute later if you try and change something that's not in the contract. That's known, that's common sense. So that's the way to avoid that. And that's why commissioning folks need to be involved earlier in projects, is to plan that out properly. Value stagnation and erosion is certain whenever projects forgets commissioning requirements early in project framing, rather delayed until during construction. Yeah, exactly the same point, right? Is if you want to figure that out during construction and make a bunch of changes and change your construction sequence to align with commissioning, it'll always cause disputes, because construction is a big, large moving machine, right? And it just doesn't turn on a dime. You need to plan these things out well in advance, and construction needs to know how commissioning is going to take place at the end of projects so that they can successfully plan for that. And if you only want to plan that out, say a few months before commissioning, well, good luck. You'll have lots of disputes and end in chaos as nothing's working on site, which is what most projects do, right? Thanks again. So informative an explanation. Great to be part of ICXA community. Is there any reference for the cost percentage allocation in project capital cost? What's the typical number you always hear is 5% or a little bit less. That's just a very high level guideline. What we'd like to do is establish some more baseline numbers that can be used when you're preparing the costing for your commissioning, for labor resources, for workflows, for timelines. That's something we haven't done yet, and maybe it's something we'd like to do in the future. And if anybody would like to work on that technical subcommittee, that would be a great thing to do, to build out some of these resources to help people when they're costing out their commissioning on their projects, some resources to rely on when you can put together agreed on numbers to cost it out. Issue with factory testing is vendor is frequently late and contractor has a very limited time to test and witness. Yes, the supply chain on projects is a huge problem as well, right? There's lots of people challenges there and delays, and nobody can seem to agree on hitting their contract delivery dates for supply items. It's a challenge for sure. Regardless, even if there's limited time to test and witness, skipping that is only going to cause more problems later. If vendors are challenged with meeting their obligations that they signed in contracts, then it's probably a good reason to select another vendor. If they're not going to do what they said, then they can't be relied on for the next project. So that's part of the continuous lessons learned process, is if vendor A has failed to deliver on their promises, well, then they're not getting work next time. That's money talks, right? That's the only way to punish these poor performing vendors is by not awarding them the next work the next time. And there's some pretty incredible systems that are being developed to monitor those supply chain initiatives and monitor in real time with some of the AI systems that are out there to ensure that these underperformers are not awarded work in the future. That's the only way they're going to improve, is when it hits them in their pocketbook, right? If they can't deliver and meet their obligations, then they can't be awarded contracts next time. The ones that can, and there are lots of good vendors out there that can hit their dates and meet their obligations, those are the ones that need to get more work. And we need to stop giving work to the underperformers. That's the only way they're incentivized, is to improve. Otherwise, we just continue on with the same late deliveries all the time. But regardless, even if the vendor is late, then skipping that testing isn't going to help. We still need to take the time to find those issues early in the factory rather than send all those issues to site and try and find them later, because they will take twice as long and be twice as expensive to address on site rather than in the factory. So it's still a time-saving and money-saving effort to do that testing in the factory. Getting to make decisions in a partnership during commissioning poses a challenge. What would be the best step or steps to take in the beginning? So this still does come from project leadership, right? And that's the initiative that the Industrial Commissioning Association is undertaking here, is to help project leadership understand the importance of commissioning. Because if you're having these discussions and making these decisions, but stakeholders on projects aren't listening, well, it's pretty tough to guide projects to success when project leaders aren't listening to the experts on their projects on how to get to success. It's still a process of ensuring that commissioning folks are involved early in projects so that we can have these conversations. And it's still an education perspective that we're undertaking here to help project leaders understand how this works and why commissioning folks need to be involved earlier. So I won't discount that, yes, it is challenging in having some of these upfront discussions with projects, but that's the initiative that we're undertaking as a commissioning community, is to fix the broken construction industry and help people understand the value of commissioning leadership to guide projects to success. So baby steps, one step at a time, but we will get there over time. What will be the best strategy to avoid delaying delivery of equipment package to project site? How can commissioning practitioners at construction phase cope with rapid technological advancement? So 2 questions there, maybe related to the previous answer, is that we can't be awarding contracts to underperforming vendors. That's the only way they learn, right, is to hit them in the pocketbook. And that's part of the lessons learned in continuous improvement. It's unfortunate that we'll have to experience that on one project, but on the next project, they can't get any work because they've demonstrated that they're not capable of doing what they said they could do. And you can't award them any work regardless of how low their price is, because if they're not going to meet their obligations, then they just can't be participating in your projects. And that's why commissioning folks need to be involved early, is to have those lessons learned and ensure that those folks aren't involved in projects, because they're just going to contribute to the failure of projects, right? How can commissioning practitioners at construction phase cope with rapid technological advancement? So I think that in the next 5 years, the technology is going to so rapidly increase with AI that anything that we've seen to date for rapid development is nothing compared to what's coming. And the construction industry has been very slow to adopt these new technologies. I think that's going to change, because the ones that are still stuck in the mud using spreadsheets or old technology are going to get left behind pretty quickly here, as some of these new systems are going to rapidly improve the productivity on projects. And the project groups that embrace these technologies and use these functions are going to go so far ahead of the ones that are still stuck in the mud that they won't even know what happened or what transitioned. Even in the length of a project, if a project takes 5 years, that's a long time in the technology world. If you start a project, the technology evolution might change a couple times during that 5-year time frame. And if you're still stuck with the old way and you want to do your next project in 5 years from now, the same way you're doing today's project, I think those project teams are in for a pretty rude awakening when they see how fast things are going to change in the next few years. So I'm excited by it. I think it's going to be great. We're finally going to be able to impact some change in the industry with some of these technological advances. And I think it's going to take the commissioning folks to push those technical advantages in the industry to be able to leverage some of these new technologies, because some of the other groups aren't going to want to, and they're going to get left behind pretty quickly. How should we capture defects in factory and claim back man hours spent by vendor representative to close factory defects? So the best thing I can suggest is don't let it leave the factory with those defects. And that's always the challenge, right? There's a push to deliver these things to site, but with those defects, it's pretty tough once it's already left site. Of course, there's a site acceptance test, and the vendor would be at site to do that particular equipment piece of startup, and anything that's not meeting requirements there can be challenging. But rather than having that reactive process to claim man hours back, I would suggest still a proactive process is find those issues earlier in your project. Find them in the factory before equipment even leaves the factory. Put in your contracts that equipment can only ship to site once all stakeholders sign off that it can be released for shipment. That way, contractor, the purchaser, and the engineer, all three groups have to agree that that piece of equipment has passed everything in the factory before it can leave to site. If you let things leave the factory uncontrolled, then yeah, all your issues are going to arrive at site. So that's the best method, is put in your contracts as a gate, cannot ship until all stakeholders approve. Sorry I joined late. Does ICXA have a list of skills or list of suggested learning topics to give any group of junior engineers that want to learn and practice commissioning? Yes, we do. The best thing is go to our course lineup, icxa.net/courses. Everything you need there as a junior engineer or as any engineer learning commissioning and want to understand the process. There's 7 modules there, walks you through the entire process defined in the ICA Global Commissioning Standard. Definitely go check that out, because that's what the process is. That's what everybody needs to know on how to complete projects. It's all in there. Check that out. Prices are not expensive. They're quite reasonable. For the depth of knowledge and expertise that you get in there, it's quite reasonable to get a decade's worth of expertise in a course like that. Check it out, because that's your fastest way to figure this stuff out and get up to speed on what's required for commissioning. All right, lots of great questions today. I appreciate everyone's involvement and everyone's discussions here. And we do this every week. So next week, I'll have another presentation lined up. Definitely watch your email so you get that notice. We'll be live streaming it on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. And yeah, once again, appreciate everybody joining, and continue the mission, continue the vision that we have here to work collectively as a commissioning community. Definitely get involved in the community. Check out the members area of the Industrial Commissioning Association. Get involved, join a technical subcommittee. There's lots of ways to get involved, and we can all collectively work together to help the struggling construction industry understand how to finish projects. Great to see everybody today, and I hope to see you again next time. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening. To become a member of the Industrial Commissioning Association, visit icxa.net. Members get access to commissioning standards, procurement specifications, commissioning training and certification, plus many more specialized resources to help you with commissioning of your industrial plant process and energy systems. Visit icxa.net for more information.